Hello, Spooky Book Club friends. It is officially the first of the month, so you know what that means. Or if you're new here, maybe you don't know what it means, but welcome. But it's the first of the month. So we are doing our Spooky Book Club extravaganza here on my channel, where the first of every single month, I post 2 Spooky Book Club videos. One of them is the one you're seeing right now, where we review and discuss the book from last month. And the other video is announcing the 2 new spooky book options for the month. It will be April 2022 for the one that will be posted this month. So if you're looking for the 2 new spooky book options for the month, that's a separate video. I'll link it in the description box for you. In this video, we're going to be doing some reviewing and a whole lot of discussing of the book we read in March, which was The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. And if you're new to the whole review and discussion portion of the Spooky Book Club situation, what I do really quickly is I go over just a general review, non-spoiler review, for those of you who are here who maybe haven't read the book yet and want to know if it was any good or if it's something you should read. Then I get into the full-on spoiler situation where I talk a little bit about what happened in the book, any reactions I had, if you relate to anything, or if there's anything that I missed that you want to talk about, or anything you want to respond to, like if I mention something and you're like, yeah, or you're like, no, or whatever. You can leave any of your reactions down in the comments, or we can talk to each other in the comments. We all kind of just have a full-on spooky family moment in the comments and chit chat about the book. So anything you want to talk about regarding this book, if you read it, you can leave it down in the comments. Anyways, if you want to grab a beverage or a snack, I'll be hanging out doing all the discussing. So I have 2 beverages. I'm double fisting tonight. Got my water in this spooky cup, and I've got my adult beverage in this Halloween extravaganza cup because it's halfway to Halloween month. Also, I've got my Halloween performance fleece on, a fleece onesie with jack-o'-lanterns all over it. And what else? Like bats. Got this bad boy from TJ Maxx last year. Here we are. We're doing a full-on book discussion and review. Let's get into the review portion, non-spoiler. Let's talk about The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. That is what we read. And okay, this is gonna be really hard. Normally I do a little summary. There really is no summary for this book because there's a lot going on and I don't want to give anything at all away. I'll just say this, there's a lot going on. There are a lot of characters, they start overlapping. It's one of those books where you don't really know what's happening until the end. A lot of things start crossing over, like overlapping, different people, different worlds, different things. You really don't know what's happening, which is really exciting if you're one of those people who just loves the guessing game. It's one of those where you're constantly trying to solve what's happening or make sense of what's happening. Right when you think you're figuring one thing out, then it just keeps unraveling. It's a really good one for that if you're into the unraveling of a story. Locks you in, it flies by. I was up till 2 a.m. reading this book. I could not put it down. So it really is one of those books. I can't reveal really any more than that because the stories are so complex. Even the description talks about, I think, people disappearing, a cat, reading a Bible, like all this stuff. It's totally random. The description is, it doesn't really do the book any justice. You have no idea what's going on going into it. I think that's honestly the best way to go about this book is to just go into it completely blindly because I feel like that just makes the ending that much better. And what I will say, it's hard to give any sort of trigger warning to anybody because I don't want to give away anything about this book. I will say there are some, like this book is very uncomfortable and that there are disappearances, there are things involving children in that way, and there are some toxic family dynamics happening in this book. So if any of that makes you very uncomfortable and you don't like reading that or you can't read that, I would say avoid this book. I want to say something else, but I don't want to give anything away, like, because this would seriously give it away if I mentioned it. So I'm just going to say that. I'm going to say if you enjoy twists and turns and you like guessing all the way until the end, I would say this is a good one. I think there are opportunities to get pretty close to guessing what's happening in this book. But I think no matter what happens, even if you guess some of what's happening in this book, I think there will be things you'll still be surprised about. Now that I've just jabbed my jaws about nothing, I definitely think you should read it. That's all I gotta say about that. I feel like I say that for every single book every month, but I don't feel like we've read a bad book. Have you guys felt like that? If you've been around here in Spooky Book Club for a while, have you felt like there was anything that you just didn't like? Even if it's not always my first choice, I end up enjoying it. So I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments. So, okay, all right, let's get into the discussion. I don't even know how I'm approaching this, but I'm gonna take a sip of my beverage. If you don't wanna hear any spoilers at all, I'm gonna let you go here. Definitely get out of here because I don't want to ruin any of it for you. I don't want to do that to you. But if you're not going to read it or you don't mind spoilers, you can stick around, of course. Or if you're here for the discussion and review, I don't even know where we're going with this. This one's going to get interesting, I feel like. All right, now that it's just us, spooky family, what did you think of the next house on Needless Street? No, Jade. No, the last house on Needless Street. What did we think? It's getting a little toasty in here. This fleece, full body fleece jumpsuit was a bad choice. What did you think of the last house on Needless Street? What'd you think? I don't really know where to start with any of this whole discussion, this whole thing, everything that happened in this book. I think at first, it was a lot. If anyone else felt that way, let me know in the comments. I could definitely see where somebody would set this book down and be like, I just was frustrated. Like it was just a lot and you don't know who belongs where, what exactly is happening. And it just feels a little bit all over the place. But once I was invested in those characters, I was all in. I had to know what was happening. I think that's what I really did like about this book. Is I was invested in different characters at different times and in different ways. Like sometimes you're loving a character and then you realize like this person is not what you thought. This person's not what you thought. Nobody is at all what you thought they were gonna be at all. And I really like that. I love any sort of twist like that. Let's dive into my notes and see what I had to say here. Okay, my first note is not too sure what's happening. And I think that best wraps up pretty much the first half of the book. Not too sure what's happening at all. I think okay, and then my next note, and this is where I'll have a question for you. I said, are all the characters one person? So I don't know if anyone else was already getting that feeling that this was all one person, like Lauren, Olivia. Okay, I don't know that I knew that Ted and Olivia and Lauren were all one person, but I was tying Olivia and Lauren together. I couldn't place them quite yet, and I figured they were Lulu or part of Lulu kind of thing. Just because of the way that they were interchanging, like they never existed together. So that's where, and I guess I should have figured it out because Ted also he wouldn't remember entire hours or days at a time or whatever. I thought the lapse of time was more of him blacking out from drinking and stuff than I did from switching off with different identities. I thought that Ted was the abductor, or Ted's mom was in his head, and that's kind of what led to all of this. I didn't know. The timeline was a little fuzzy, and I feel like it was like that on purpose. But the whole timeline on how old Ted was when Lulu was abducted, and if his mom was still alive, and all that kind of stuff, all that was kind of blurry. Let me know if you thought the same thing. Let's get back onto my notes. So we're talking about Dee Dee and Lulu at the beach. No, it's not Dee Dee, it's just Dee. It's Lulu, so I think I was getting ahead of myself. Dee. Her name's just Dee, just one D. Okay. So Dee and Lulu are at the beach. And then Dee, okay, I knew something was weird about that story. The snakes, and then like she didn't get bit though, or nothing. I don't know. The whole thing seemed really strange, that whole story. I didn't really think anything of it. Don't get me wrong, the snakes, that whole thing, that was kind of scary, but it just didn't match up. Something was off with that whole story. And then the boy just walked off. Like, I don't know. Something was all weird about that. There were many things in this book, almost like this book was chosen for us here. Between the Chihuahua lady, which I felt like I had a special bond with, and the pickles, the dill pickles. That was another thing. Did anyone else think the Chihuahua lady was dead? Like that he had killed her? Because she was gone for a while. She disappeared. So I was thinking as we're reading this book that Ted is offing some people. And he's getting a little out of control kind of thing. Because that's what his mom had told him. Like that whole thing, the whole storyline made sense. I was trying to piece it together because I didn't know where we were going. And I went a totally wrong direction. Let me know if that also happened to you. What were you thinking happened to the Chihuahua lady? What about the lady he went on a date with? And like these random missing pieces of time. What did you think was happening in these moments? So, when Dee moves next door, after that, I'm like, okay, wait, the cat is the daughter is the cat. I knew it wasn't his daughter from day one because it didn't seem like he had had many experiences with relationships unless something really messed up happened. The whole thing, I was just really thrown by the daughter situation. Not with the fact that she was his daughter, but the fact that who is this girl? Is this Lulu? Is she the cat? This whole time, I'm wondering how Ted is interacting with Olivia. I had a feeling that Olivia's physical body was not that of a cat, was my presumption as I was reading this book. So I was like, wait, okay. So how is Ted seeing Olivia? Ted really see her as a cat, or is he treating her like a cat to keep to keep Lulu's ecosystem, or I don't know how to word it, but like Lulu's existence as it is, like to benefit himself kind of thing. I don't know. I was so thrown by all of that, but I guess I was just like, how does Ted see Olivia? Like, is he seeing a cat? Is this how did he kind of project that onto Lulu and have her create this kind of identity, or what happened and where is this? I don't know. Did anyone else think the same thing as you're reading this book? Did you wonder how Ted saw Olivia, or did you think Olivia was a cat the whole time? I was totally thrown by Ted in that mix. Let me know if you were as well. What's next? I said here, when he went on the date with the lady, did he kill her? And then, Dee went into the house. Okay, let's talk about this. Okay. This was the first real suspenseful, like, oh my gosh, she's gonna get caught, something's gonna happen, or she's gonna find. Every single time Dee went to do something in the house, or later with the tape that got thrown out of the hole, or the little, mail hole thing, slot, that's what I'm thinking of. The whole time I'm thinking, okay, she's gonna find Lulu. And is Lulu gonna look like Lulu? Is she gonna know when she hears Dee's voice when Dee goes into the house? Is she gonna know that's her sister? So I was kind of surprised when there wasn't even a peep, not even from the freezer with the holes in it, or that Lulu didn't at least peek around the corner, or it's like, okay, I feel like there's something weird going on here. Or like I didn't know where he was keeping her. And so that's when the element of like the different worlds, or like not worlds, the different floors, or I couldn't really figure out what was going on. Like, were they different floors, or was it like a basement and the upstairs, or was it the attic? And that part kind of confused me a little bit. And I don't know if I totally wrapped my head around it, but from what I understood, he built, like there was like a whole duplicate of the upstairs or the main floor. In my mind, it kept seeming like it was like a different, like a cabin or a bunker or something like that. And that's where he was keeping Lauren, or Lulu, or whoever. I thought they were the same. So I thought that he was keeping Lauren in a separate location when she wasn't with him, like when she was with her mom, which I knew she wasn't with her mom the whole time. Let me know if you knew that too. Like you knew that she was not going to school. She wasn't going to her mom. She wasn't doing any of that. But I thought he was keeping her like in a cabin or a bunker, like underground somewhere. And who were the green boys? Was that just the hallucination from the meds? Or like, I'm so confused at a lot of what was happening there, of like the floors and the green boys and all this. I think I got it. I think it was 2 different floors that looked exactly the same. And I don't know if I'm getting it right. Let me know in the comments how you read it, or what happened, or what I missed. Let me know in the comments, because I have no idea. I feel like it was 2 different floors. But I'm still confused about the Green Boys in the attic. And I know there was no cabin or something like that. But in my mind, at first, that's what I thought it was. There was like a bunch of stuff that started meshing together and crossing. It almost kind of read like a hallucination too. As I was reading it, I'm like, I don't know if I'm really understanding what's happening or where I'm at right now. And I think that was really cool with the book. It kind of puts you in the mindset of the actual characters. I enjoyed that. But it was also really confusing sometimes. And I was like, wait, where are we now? Who are we now? And I think that's kind of a cool way to kind of go about it, but I don't know. Then Olivia finds the white flip-flop. Okay. Anyways, the flip-flop. Let me know what you thought about that. Olivia finds the white flip-flop under the refrigerator, which to me can only mean one thing. Just to me, all of these things that were happening were kind of confirming what we kind of knew about Ted and all that kind of stuff. At this point, I wasn't even thinking about his mom. Let me know in the comments what you thought. I didn't think she was innocent though. Like when that whole conversation was had where the hamster died and a rat or whatever it was died. I wasn't totally sold on the fact that his mom was innocent and that the gene didn't pass down to her. Let me know if you suspected his mom at all for anything, like when it came to anything. I haven't even talked about the psychiatrist yet. But that was a trip in itself. Ted goes to this psychiatrist's office that's empty. For a second there, I thought the psychiatrist wasn't real. Did anyone else feel that way? Because his office was empty and it had building blocks on the outside or something. The whole thing kind of felt like he was going into an empty building and no one was there. Ted would kind of come in and talk about, like, it kind of just seemed like the doctor was in the background. But then you have the whole situation where Ted runs into the psychiatrist in the bathroom, but Ted is wasted. So you don't know if this is actually happening. Ted feels like he's found out and they're at that gas station. So the whole story is playing out for Ted to be found out that he's like a serial killer essentially. And it's kind of all playing out like this. And then basically once Ted is found out and then he has to basically get Lauren and Olivia out the door, it's like a whole other book. It's like a whole other life, which by the way, I totally forgot to mention the whole part where he moves the gods and stuff. That whole part was really weird. So I'm thinking the whole time the gods are all of the dead people in his life, these children, his mom, everybody. And so he goes out, Dee follows him out there, and Dee gets bit by a snake, which I didn't see coming. And this whole part just blew my freaking mind. Did anyone else just, their heads explode during this part? She's bit by a snake. She's going after Ted. Olivia and Lauren are not after Ted, but they're planning to kill Ted. And then they stab Ted, but then they stab themselves. What? I did not see that coming. I did not think that whole part. Let me know if you saw that coming. Let me know down in the comments if you were so confused. What was happening? To get to this place, pretty much Lauren and Olivia had to kind of merge. So that part wasn't even surprising. I'm like, I already knew Lauren and Olivia were one, but I thought they were one with Lulu, who was in the bag, who was gonna kill Ted. Did not think it was gonna be Ted as all of them, basically. Or them as Ted. Anyways, Ted gets stabbed. And all of them are stabbed and they're just laying there, and then Dee comes over. Even though I know that Olivia also got stabbed, it still didn't like process in my brain that Lulu wasn't there. So once Dee gets to Ted, even though she's tripping balls because she got bit by a snake, she's looking at Ted who's been stabbed and she's like, where's Lulu? Like, where's my sister? And I'm thinking, where's Lulu? Like, where the frick is Lulu? Let me know if you thought the same thing. Let me know down in the comments. I was seriously confused. Where, like, did she, and then Dee's kind of making it seem like she ran off into the woods. But like, we didn't even, it was so confusing. So then Dee's out in the woods and we find out the real story about what happened at the beach, which blows my mind again. Let me know if you saw that coming. Basically, D goes out to fool around with this guy, the college kid or whatever, and Lulu gets hit in the head or dives or hits her head on a rock regardless and is bleeding out. And D runs away from her sister because of snakes, comes back, and her sister is gone. And a car drove her away. Like, she got there just in time to see her go, like, her sister drive off. And D goes back to her parents and tells an entire story about snakes and her period. And I am, what? And D dies. And it's like, I don't even know what it said. Like, something like, it is what it is, essentially. And I'm like, wait, what? So I have to unravel this whole person who you think is this hero for going out and looking for her sister, when it turns out there's this lifelong secret. She knew her sister had been really seriously injured and kidnapped, and the whole thing. And then you find out that she'd also been the person to hurt all of those birds. And then she's like, well, I just, I had to do it. It was for the greater good, essentially. And here is innocent old Ted just sitting here with his birds dying, and he didn't do a damn thing. And that just crushes my soul into a million pieces, because that whole part with the birds was probably, of the entire book, one of the harder things to read, as he's trying to save these birds and he's just making it worse. And you find out it's D. I don't know, D. That made me real mad. Anyways, my mind is blown at this point. Like, what? This whole story is unraveling. In the meantime, or before this had happened, you found out that Ted was alive. So Ted had basically come back to life and D dies, which I feel like, did they even find her body? Anyway, so Ted is not very alive, but he's alive. This guy finds him on the trails, and the whole relationship between Ted and the doctor was probably one of my favorites in the whole book. There's actually somebody out there who wants to understand Ted and doesn't just judge him based off of stereotypes or his history or where he lives, what he looks like, everything else that he had kind of gone through that he felt everyone was judging him for, and they were, to be fair. Have this man who just wants to listen to him. We find out that he's been giving these hallucinogenics, which is the wrong medication or illegal medication by his psychiatrist, because his psychiatrist wanted to bank of this whole situation and exploit it, which is just not surprising, but also horrible. And then from there, the whole other mind-blowing experience happens, and we find out about the truth of everything about Ted's mom, which I wrote in my notes, my whole life is a lie. I'm thinking this is what's happening and this is who this guy is. And then we find out that none of that even, he wouldn't hurt a fly, basically, is what we learn. And it's soul crushing what he's gone through, everything his mom put him through, and the whole thing about his mom saying that she was the generation that skipped and that she sees it in his eyes. It was just, the whole thing is disgusting. It makes me, it was the most uncomfortable situation to read about, that whole thing about his mom cutting him open and then healing him over and over and over again. So then basically the pain is like, there's a whole new identity for the pain, and that is just the whole thing was just so sad. That whole part about his mom and all of that. And I know this isn't a real story, but in my mind, it just felt like I felt so bad for judging Ted. You know what I mean? And I think that was probably the point. I felt so bad. I wanted to give Ted a hug and tell him I'm sorry. I felt so bad. I was like, I'm so sorry, Ted. I didn't mean to judge a man. And I just wanted to give him a hug and like go bring him some cookies or something. But like, the poor guy had gone through so much, and we find out everything about his mom and all of that, and then how she died, and then, oh man, my whole life is a lie. So uncomfortable, that whole part. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. Were you also wanting to give Ted a hug? Were you also just feeling really bad? Like, I felt like a shit human being, honestly. Like, just not good at all because of all of the, like, here I am, like, I just completely misjudged. And I know that the story was created in that way, so we would do that. Because I think for me, what solidified it was mainly when Lauren, her feet were broken after going to the mall and pulling whatever she pulled. And it said she had scars all over her because he had poured this hot water into this freezer or old freezer or fridge or whatever it was. And she has welts all over her body. So I'm thinking Ted is this horrible guy, not knowing that they're the same person, and also thinking like this whole thing with his mom and how she said he was, like all this stuff. So when it really, like when the truth comes out, I know it's a fictional character, but I can't get over it. I felt so bad. I also made the note that it actually made sense because there hadn't been another child disappearance since, like there hadn't been one since Lulu. And his mom died shortly after, so it made more sense, but I didn't put two and two together. I thought he had just moved on to adults, and that's why he was going on the dating sites, and that's what he had done. That's where my mind went with it. So I didn't think that it was his mom, but it makes total sense. The whole story makes sense that Ted is an innocent creature, and I'm a huge a-hole that just jumped to conclusions. And then the gods ended up being like his mom's stuff, or was his mom still under the cabinet? I'm confused about where the heck his mom is, but I'm not really worried about it. One last thing I wanted to mention is even though I was really excited for Ted and his new life and all that kind of stuff, even though I knew it was going to be a challenge because now he was going to have to learn to coexist with Olivia in this new stage of life, because I feel like before it was all kind of just a relationship built and created really on survival. But what I will say is this, even though I'm really happy for Ted and his new life, I was so invested in Lulu and Lulu being Lauren and the whole aspect of everything Lauren had been through. You know, her feet were broken. She was like hot boiling water was poured on. In my mind, I'm invested in Lulu being Lauren, even though nothing said it was, but in my mind it was. That to just find out that Lulu had died way back when, and that she's gone forever, and we're not, like, Lulu isn't there. That whole part, there's like a whole little mourning process all over again to lose Lulu. I don't know if anyone else felt so invested in Lulu and finding her and her being there and envisioning her being being Lauren, basically. I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but anyways, that's kind of how it felt. Kind of felt like I was mourning her. If anyone else felt like that, let me know in the comments. But overall, I really love the story, and I loved how, if anyone read the afterword, did anyone read that? Super interesting. I really loved how the author mentioned that this is a story of survival, and I think that's why I was so attached to Lulu. Felt like this whole, like, I was rooting for Lulu. I loved all of that aspect of it, the discomfort, the mystery, the everything, feeling like a total a-hole for judging Ted. It's totally different than anything we've read. Guys, let me know what you thought of the book down in the comments. Any of your favorite characters, your favorite parts, anything you agree with, disagree with, anything that I missed, which I'm sure I did, although we just had a full-blown recap of that book, which I don't know that I always end up doing this, don't I? I just go on a full rant about from point A to point Z of the whole book. But this one especially was a total roller coaster ride, and I had jabbed my jaws. So let me know what you thought about this book in the comments. Anything you want to talk about regarding the book, let me know. And yeah, anyways, hope you enjoyed this really chaotic review and discussion of this book, which I guess this book itself was kind of chaotic, so I feel like it fits. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the book and the discussion and the review. If you did, you can give it a thumbs up, say hey ghoul hey down in the comments, because you know I love talking to ya. Also, anything you want to talk about in the comments, let me know down there as well. And yeah, the book club book for April should be up right now with the 2 new book options for the month. So definitely check that out. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being part of Spooky Book Club, and I will see you guys next time.